The 8th principle we want to share with you is seek role models and mentors. Seek role models and mentors to help you grow. Role models are people you admire who have traits you wish to emulate. Warren Buffett is a role model of mine, not just because he's generated so much wealth, but because he's giving it back to society. Mentors are role models who are willing to nurture you, take you under their wing. Mentors show you how to get to the next level, encourage you to push forward when you want to throw in the towel, and humble you relentlessly when your head starts to swell. I've been blessed to have had many role models and many mentors in my life. Mentors who helped me go to the next level. This includes Colonel Wyrick, who I talked about in a prior video, Julio Bastida, who knew 7 languages and taught me abstract algebra, Mark Wolfson and Myron Scholes, who I've talked about in other videos, Bob Kaplan, who is a phenomenal scholar, and Catherine Schipper. And I want to talk today about Catherine Schipper and how she made a difference in my life. But first, some context. Carolyn and I decided to go back to school after we were married for about 4 or 5 years. And in the time, we were living in a very small rural town in Florida. And by way of background, I had graduated from a community college, gone to a school that wasn't known by the top universities, and had 10 years of experience teaching in a community college and teaching math, not business. In fact, except for a few business courses, I really didn't know much about business, just a lot about math. The town where we lived in, the average age at the time was around 65 years old. Now, I knew this because my students had done statistical surveys in the town. And so we were considered young, and we thought we were pretty hot stuff. And so we applied to a few top universities. Now, let me just say up front, if I was looking at my application and I was at some of the schools that we applied to, with all I know now, I'd probably have rejected myself. So anyway, we decided we'd go visit one of the universities that we really wanted to go to, and that was Carnegie Mellon University. And both of us were going to try to get into Carnegie. Carolyn with an MBA and myself for a PhD. And so we thought we'd show up and just let them know how good we were. What happens in those situations is one gets interviews with several faculty. And so I started the day with one of the young faculty, and he said, Carnegie Mellon's a very mathematical place, and you have to have a very strong understanding of math. I said, well, I have a master's degree in abstract algebra. And he said, you need to understand applied math to succeed here. I said, well, I've taught applied math for 10 years, and I think I'm pretty good at math. And everything I said, and I think we've all been involved in this before, if you've ever been rejected, no matter what you say green, he says red. And you start getting this, what I call the yeah, but syndrome. No matter what you say, it's yeah, but, yeah, but, yeah, but. So I go to the second interview, and it's the same thing all over again. In this case, the person who was interviewing me said, have you got a thesis topic yet? Thesis topic? I'm just applying to get in. I talked to 4 of your PhD students yesterday. Most of them are in the 3rd or 4th year of the program, and they're just starting to get a thesis topic. Why would I have one now? And again, the standards seemed so high, and it was pretty clear to me I was going to get rejected. This, of course, was a humbling experience. So I go to the next interview, and this is someone who's turned out to be a lifelong friend, and he denies this story, but in fact, he was not the one getting rejected, so he doesn't remember the details. But I asked him, I said, why am I not going to get in? He said, candidly, you're too old. I was 31 years old. I didn't think I was old. The average age back home was 65. I was a youngster. But with hindsight now and knowing what I know now, most people start their doctoral program before 31 years old. Now it was really clear to me I wasn't going to get in. I knew the reason, but I still had some interviews. So I go to the next interview, and it's the last one for the morning. It's around 11 a.m., and this is with Catherine Schipper. Catherine Schipper is the only woman inducted into the Accounting Hall of Fame, which includes both academics and practitioners. She's an amazing scholar. And at the time, though, she was quite young in career. And so I walk into her office, and she says, Mr. Wilson, very formal. And we start chatting, and she's very pleasant, and the phone rings. And she said to the person on the other end of the phone, I can't talk to you right now. I have this individual in my office. It's one of those things you remember, individual. Now, having felt like I was rejected before I got there, and then being called an individual, this really neutral term, well, that was the final insult. I wanted to crawl under the table. I felt so humiliated. And so I said to her, look, it's clear I'm not going to get into Carnegie. Would you please tell me about some schools where someone like me might go? And you see, she had read my application carefully. This was clear from the small conversation we'd had up till then. And she said, sure. Here are 3 or 4 places where you could go, and they're larger doctoral programs, and, they take in people that are a little older like you are. I was getting ready to leave, and I said, by the way, I have some more interviews this afternoon. I wonder if you'd be kind enough to cancel them for me, because I'm just going to head out of here. And she said, I'd be glad to do that for you. And I started out, and then one of those moments that changes your life that you never forget. I put my hand on the doorknob, and I was about to turn the knob, and she said, "You know what? You surprised me. You really surprised me." And I turned, and she said, "I knew you weren't the smartest candidate we've ever looked at. You didn't have the experience we normally would look for in a doctoral student. But the one thing I thought you had is guts. I saw all those things you've done in your life, and I thought you were a fighter. And here you are, quitting before you get started." And she paused. And she said, "You know, I will cancel those appointments for you this afternoon, but I'll give you time, first of all, to think about this. And if you don't show up, I'll go ahead and cancel them." And that made all the difference in the world. So I go out to the car where my wife Carolyn's waiting for me, and it's noon. And, well, candidly, I just cried and cried my eyes out. I felt so humiliated. I just felt so rejected. And my wife looks over at me, and she says, "What are you doing crying? What are you doing letting these people push you around? That's not you. You're a fighter." So here were the two women who have turned out to be my mentors. They've had a phenomenal impact on my life. And at this very moment, within a half hour of each other, they remind me of who I am. I'm a fighter. That's what I do. And so I went back in there that afternoon, and I fought, and I fought, and I got in. And the central lesson here, and there's really two of them. Number one, find role models and mentors, and then trust them. Trust them. Let them work you over. Let them be hard on you. They'll help you. But the second lesson is you never know when you can be a role model or mentor. You don't know when you're going to turn a life, when you're going to make a huge difference in a life just by what you say in that perfect moment, and somebody has to hear it. I needed to hear that lesson. If you seek out role models and mentors, they'll help you live your life to the fullest, and you can help others live their life to the fullest.